We received this question from one of our listeners.
Hey, Ralph. My husband and I have been going through some really rough times, and our credit cards are getting out of control. We haven't even been able to make some of the minimum payments lately, and I got a call yesterday from one of the companies telling me that they are going to charge off the credit card. I am not even sure what that means, but someone told me that this could have a huge impact on my credit and could even trigger some tax issues for my husband and I. I don't even know where to start, so I thought this could be a good topic for your show. I don't want to make a huge mistake, but we really can't afford to pay these credit cards with the costs of everything going up, so I would really appreciate your help and ideas.
Have you ever had a credit card charged off or forgiven? Do you know how this can impact you financially and your taxes? Well, stay tuned to find out. We're going to break it all down for you on today's show.
Welcome to the Ask Ralph podcast. We're listening to an experienced financial professional with over 30 years of experience can help you make sense of confusing questions, current headlines, and industry trends about taxes, small business, financial decision-making, investment strategies, and even the art of proper budgeting. Ask Ralph makes the complex simple by sharing his real-world knowledge from a Christian perspective with all things financial. Now here's your host, Ralph Estep Jr.
Welcome, listeners, to our Financial Friday show. I'm so glad you chose to join us. I just want to thank you for listening and supporting our program as we continue to grow. Today, we're discussing the financial and many people don't know the tax impacts when a credit card is charged off or forgiven. Might seem like a great situation, but you need to understand the impacts of this. Getting a credit card charged off or forgiven can be emotionally freeing. It is a great feeling. But it also comes with some important financial and some tax considerations that you need to be aware of. I also mentioned that I did a show about 2 weeks ago about effective strategies to reduce your credit card debt. So be sure to check that out. It may prevent you from having to go down this road altogether. Before I start, I want to let you know it's a beautiful sunny Friday morning here on the farm, and I understand the temps are rising. So I guess spring is actually making an appearance. And don't forget to tune into tomorrow's show when I have a lively interview with Mark Lawley. Him and Krista do what's called the Practical Prepping Podcast. We talked about the state of the economy and ways to prepare yourself for what we both believe is a rough economic time ahead. You can check out their podcast at practicalprepping.info. Tomorrow's a show you don't want to miss, and I also highly recommend you check out their show. It is a great show about practical things you can do to always be prepared. So let's start with today's Bible verse. This is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verses 18 and 19. And it says this, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing." Thought that was rather apropos for today's episode. So first, let's define what a charge-off is and what debt forgiveness means. Yeah, of course, I made an assumption everybody understands that. So when you stop making payments on a credit card for several months, the card issuer is likely going to charge off your account. This means they remove it from their books as an asset because they no longer expect to collect that debt. You're basically not paying them. The debt still exists, you still technically owe it, but the creditor has decided to write it off because they don't want to continue to chase after you. Debt forgiveness is when the credit card company agrees to accept less than the full balance owed as a payment in full. They are forgiving a portion of the debt. This usually happens through settlement negotiations or bankruptcy. This may be a situation when you call the credit card company and say, "Listen, I just can't afford to make these payments. Will you accept a settlement?" That's what we call debt forgiveness. But that has some strings attached to it, and that's what we're going to talk about on today's show. Now, what happens when your credit card debt is charged off or forgiven? Here's some key things that you need to know and understand. And this one is the biggest one. Number one, your credit score is going to take a hit. An unpaid charge-off can stay on your credit report for up to 7 years. And it will severely damage your credit score. Even after debt forgiveness, it can still impact your credit for years. Listen, folks, what's going to happen effectively on your credit report is they're going to show a charge-off and it's going to say received less than the full balance. That will have a negative impact on your score. So it's going to affect your credit. Number two, you may owe taxes. Under IRS rules, if a lender forgives $600 or more of your credit card debt, they're required to report this as taxable income. You'll get what's called a Form 1099-C. And you have to pay income taxes on that forgiven debt amount. There are some exceptions like bankruptcy, but you've got to make sure you understand the tax implications. So you want to meet with a tax expert to talk about this. One of the other things is insolvency. Number three, you could still be sued. Even after a charge-off, the creditor or debt collector could still take legal action to try to recover the remaining debt through garnishment. What is garnishment, Ralph? Well, that's where they might come out and try to attach your wages. They have several years to pursue this. And number 4, your interest rate will spike. Any remaining cards will likely impose penalty pricing with interest rates above 30%, which makes it very difficult to get new credit. Number 5, it may impact your career. Some employers now check your credit, so a charge-off could hurt your job prospects in certain fields, especially government, banking, or finance roles. A lot of people don't realize that, but credit scores and credit reports are used for employment. So you have to understand there are some serious financial consequences to be aware of. You don't just walk away from a charge-off or debt forgiveness cleanly. Now, what can you do to deal with a charge-off or forgiven debt responsibly? Maybe this is the best decision. Here are some tips to how to deal with it in a responsible way. Number 1, you want to negotiate with creditors before a charge-off. Work out a payment plan or offer a settlement. This looks a lot better than an unpaid charge-off. I used to run a credit union, and I would tell our members, if you're in financial distress, call us. We will be willing to work with you. Maybe we can work out a payment plan. It's certainly a lot better than a complete unpaid charge-off. I mentioned a few minutes ago, it might say settled for less than the full amount, but that certainly looks better than a complete charge-off. Number 2, and I mentioned this a second ago, get tax advice about forgiven debt. Consult with a tax professional like myself to understand if you'll owe taxes and how to manage it. If you think about it from a logical perspective, let's say they charge off a $10,000 credit card. Well, you're not going to pay $10,000 in tax. It will be $10,000 worth of income based at your tax rate. So it still might be financially better to go ahead and allow that debt to be forgiven, and you'll pay tax on a portion of that. Number 3, continue paying on your other cards. Keep other accounts in good standing to start rebuilding your credit. That's one of the things you have to think about. If you unfortunately find yourself in this role like this listener today, where you're going to need to make some decisions, make sure you keep other cards current so that you continue to build up your credit. Next thing you want to do is contact credit bureaus. Make sure the charge-off status is being reported correctly and dispute any errors. I've seen this reported incorrectly on credit bureaus, and that's the kind of thing that will keep on coming back to bite you. Number 5, you need to improve your credit mix. Over time, add new positive accounts. Maybe that would be a secured card or an installment loan. You want to demonstrate that you can handle credit again. This doesn't have to be the end of the story, but it's going to mean that you're going to need to take some time to do some rebuilding. Next thing you want to do is number 6, consider some legal options. If sued over the debt, don't ignore it. Explore protections like bankruptcy to eliminate the debt. Now, I am not an attorney, so I don't want to give you any legal advice, but you don't want to just ignore it if you get a letter in the mail saying you're being sued, because they will get what's called a default judgment, and then they'll be able to attach your wages or even maybe levy your bank accounts. The most important advice is to be proactive. Don't wait for charge-off to happen unexpectedly. If you're struggling with credit card debt, just like this listener today, deal with it early on. Create a debt repayment plan. Consolidate or negotiate lower payoffs and protect your finances and credit before further damage occurs. So before we wrap up, I want to remind all of our listeners to visit our podcast page. Do that at AskRalphPodcast.com. As I always say there, you can leave us a review, share your thoughts, or even send us a message like this caller did today. We love getting calls from our listeners with future questions. We want to help you. If we know what you want to talk about, we can help you even better. While you're at our website, make sure you join our email list so you get our daily emails talking about what the show topics are. If you have a specific tax or financial consulting question, you can also schedule time with me right there on the website. Now, here's my ask for today. I want you to share this episode if you know someone who's struggling with credit card debts and considering a charge-off or debt forgiveness. Have them listen to this episode and maybe they can get some guidance before they make that decision. So let's recap a bit. With God's guidance and wisdom from the Bible, we can make good financial decisions even after mistakes. The book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 7 warns that the borrower is a slave to the lender. So be vigilant about avoiding unmanageable debt that could lead to charge-offs. In closing, my friends, credit card charge-offs and debt forgiveness can significantly impact your finances, your credit, and your taxes for years. You want to seek help early before an account becomes delinquent. If your debt is forgiven, work positively to rebuild your credit and manage your tax obligations. And most importantly, reflect on how overspending may have contributed and realign your money habits with biblical principles of stewardship, discipline, and wisdom. We talk about all of those things on this show. So visit AskRalphPodcast.com for more resources or in improving your financial health from a Christian perspective. Please subscribe to our show, rate it, and share this podcast if you found it helpful. There's over almost 400 episodes now out there. So stay financially savvy, my friends, and may God bless you abundantly today.
Thank you for joining us on the Ask Ralph podcast. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. And remember, financial issues don't have to be complicated. Just ask Ralph. The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media, Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.